Okay, we're going to talk. This is for lecture 3 for History 111, and I'm going to talk about the Bantu migrations. We've pretty much talked about sedentary civilizations so far. We talked about Egypt. We talked about Mesopotamia. The Hebrews did move around a little bit, but we didn't really mention that too much. But I want to talk about a migration because human beings began to move, and human beings have been moving throughout their history. So I want to talk about the Bantu. Now, Bantu is actually a family of languages in sub-Saharan Africa, and it's a really widespread family of languages for reasons I'm about to explain. But the Bantu-speaking peoples developed agriculture several thousand, we don't know, but before 4000 BC, along the African Sahel. And again, the African Sahel is this strip of fertile land across the lower edge of the Sahara Desert. So to the north of the Sahel, you have pure desert. To the south of the Sahel, you have in some cases tropical rainforest. But the Sahel is this sort of moderate zone, a transition zone between the desert and rainforest, etc. So the Bantu-speaking peoples developed agriculture in today what would be northern Nigeria, Chad, that region. And they developed a good package. They had some animals, domesticated animals. They had several good domesticated crops. And they began to expand. And this is probably a case of them simply finding that agriculture led to population growth, and they outgrew the land they were on, so they had to move to the next place to keep expanding to find more farmland. And we know that between about 3000 and 1000 BCE, the Bantu-speaking peoples began to gradually just spread across Africa. And they really spread almost all the regions of sub-Saharan Africa. So they started in northern Nigeria, as the map shows, and then they migrated. Some of them migrated east, which is along the Sahel. So they're going right along the Sahel towards Ethiopia. And then they turned south in eastern Africa, when they got over to eastern Africa, because there you have a lot of wide open grasslands, etc., extending southward. And so they followed the open grasslands, they followed the territory that they were familiar with, and they managed to move all the way down essentially to South Africa over the course of about 1,000 years. Other branches of the Bantu-speaking peoples actually moved into tropical rainforest Africa, in the area of the Congo, etc. And there they had to really adapt their agriculture, right? They had to develop new crops. Now they had the idea of agriculture, they understood how it worked, so they developed new crops, and crops, tropical crops, and then they expanded throughout this sort of tropical rainforest zone in central West Africa, which is today the Congo, Democratic Republic of Congo, etc. And so by 1000 BC, they had basically pushed into most of sub-Saharan Africa. Now, along the way, they're going to encounter lots of other peoples. There were lots of hunting and gathering groups who lived in various parts of Africa. And basically, the Bantu peoples, when they ran into them, they had a technological advantage. Well, they usually had a population advantage, but they also had technological advantages in that they had metallurgy and some other advanced technologies. And when they ran into these other groups, one of two things happened, and we're not really sure, and it probably varied from place to place. But in some cases, they absorbed other groups, hunting and gathering groups. They simply said, "Oh, come settle down with us, and we'll teach you how to do agriculture, etc." In other cases, they pushed those hunting and gathering groups out of territory. So there was probably conflict, maybe warfare. We don't know. All right. But basically, by 1000 BC. The Bantu-speaking peoples had basically moved throughout most of sub-Saharan Africa and had brought agriculture and a bunch of other technologies with them wherever they went. And today there are thousands of dialects of Bantu languages all over sub-Saharan Africa. Now, what was the culture the Bantu-speaking peoples brought with them? Well, first of all, they had a full package of what we would call advanced technologies for this time period, right? They started off with stone tools, but then they developed metallurgy. They developed iron, which is an advanced form of metallurgy. They had other technologies that you would think of, such as pottery and things like that. And so they had the full package: the agriculture, and domesticated animals, metallurgy, etc. But they did not develop the sorts of centralized governments and cities that you see in Mesopotamia or, as we'll see in China or India or Egypt. And instead, they remained a fairly decentralized society. And what that meant was that basically each village or small region was sort of self-governing, and they had village elders who sort of acted as the government and often acted as priests or shaman also. And each village was basically just self-sufficient and self-governing. And so they did, but one of the things is they did not develop, except in a few cases, and we'll talk about this as we go along, they did not develop big cities, and they did not develop complex government structures. And I'm going to talk in the discussion section for today about why that might be, okay? And it has a lot to do with environmental factors. But that said, they also developed a form of religion, and this varied quite a bit because, these Bantu migrations are happening over thousands of years, and people are moving apart, and so they're developing their religions in their own ways. And so different regions had variations on the religions. But one of the central ideas was that they tended to think of a single creator god. So they tended to have a monotheistic religion where they thought of a single god who had created the earth and everything in it. But they tended, and this varied quite a bit from region to region and different various variations in the religion, but they tended to think that the God who created the earth was really not paying much attention. Either the God had left, or the God didn't care about human beings, or the God was just simply too exalted to really care about individual human beings. So the actual practice of the religion was not that you didn't pray to this single creator God. You sort of said, yeah, he's out there. That's great. Instead, many of the areas the Bantu people settled developed various religions that focused on local spirits or local deities who were under this one single supreme god, or maybe ancestor worship or things like that could help you to navigate, droughts and disease and things like that. You would pray to the local spirits, or you would pray to lower level deities, etc. So there were lots of variations on what kinds of religions these were. But overall, if you look at the development of Africa at this time, they developed all the sorts of technologies, agriculture, animal domestication, metallurgy, advanced metallurgy, pottery, etc. All those things they developed, but they did not develop a centralized society with big cities and lots of social class distinctions and lots of centralized governments and big armies, etc. And again, I'll talk about why in the discussions, but for right now, that sort of covers the Bantu migrations.